Welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of StressFreeNow.info. Our featured guest today is Christa Gesztesi, speaking about Brain Gym Method, a way of integrating body, mind, and spirit for optimal living. Christa is the founder of Intelligent Connections based in New York City. She is a licensed brain gym instructor who has conducted trainings and taught brain gym workshops all over New York City, and she is a tenured New York City teacher. She's also affiliated with the Epiphany Academy of Formative Spirituality, which pursues excellence in the original fields of formation science, anthropology, and theology. Audience, welcome. Christa, we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Bob and Christine. It's such a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, Christa, thank you so much. And audience, you are in for a treat. We have Christa all the way from New York City. So I think most people have heard of New York City at this point. So, Christa, you're a licensed brain gym instructor. Could you tell our audience what Brain Gym is and how you came to be affiliated with that company?
Sure. So Brain Gym is a movement-based learning program, and it was started in the 80s by Paul Dennison. And basically what it does is it teaches different movements that are very simple and very effective that target different areas of the brain. And what happens is that it helps you, by doing these movements, it helps you re-educate your nervous system so that you can communicate more easily, that you can be more centered and organized, and that you can be more focused. And with students, that focus also leads to comprehension improvements. And then in addition to that, one of the biggest things that it does as well is help you feel more relaxed and calm. And so from there, you had asked about how I got into it. So I was in grad school for teaching English to speakers of other languages, and in one of our classes, one of the instructors said, today we're going to hear from an occupational therapist who uses a practice called Brain Gym. And so we all sat and listened to her presentation, and she shared with us 5 basic movements that help you basically find your own pace and your own rhythm and your own timing so that you can ground yourself and feel more centered. And after she shared with us the movements, she also showed us student work. And what she did was give us a little example of before a student did these 5 basic movements and what the student experienced after they did the 5 basic movements. And what she shared was very interesting to all of us, because the first one was just on paper. She showed us how the child was writing very skewed to the left, and then the child did the 5 basic movements from the Brain Gym program, and then she was able to write from left to right within the margins. So we were all impressed that just after a 5-minute movement sequence, this child was able to then write more easily. It wasn't that she spent hours of training or re-educating the child on how to write from left to right. And then the second thing she said, which was probably even more profound than what I just explained to you, which was that for her as an occupational therapist, she had very much paperwork, which I'm sure both of you can imagine. And she had said that it took her about 6 hours to get her paperwork done. And when she did this 5-minute movement sequence from Brain Gym, it ended up only taking her 3 hours. So it took her half the time after only doing a movement sequence that was 5 minutes long. And I basically wanted to raise my hand and say, sign me up, I will learn this. Because as you both know, I explained to you that anxiety was a big, big part of my life growing up. And so everything I did took great, great effort. And then whatever the product was, it was good, but it always felt like it wasn't it wasn't such a great product compared to the amount of effort that I put in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so let me ask you, Christa, since you mentioned anxiety, was it the type of thing where you were just waiting to the last minute or you were oversleeping? What were the habits or the things that were getting in your way with the type of anxiety that you had? How did it express itself?
I wasn't able to remain present, so I was constantly worrying and I was constantly afraid. And so whenever I had to do anything, I would have to push my way through it, whether it was getting ready to play a softball game or a piano lesson or having to read a text was impossible for me. I would have to read it several times because I couldn't stay focused. My mind would wander consistently. So for me to read a book, unless the book was completely engaging and had simple language, I wouldn't be able to read it in the normal amount of time that a child who was present and able to comprehend it easily would. So those are
and how I'm just curious because there'll be people in our audience that have similar experiences. Until what age was this, or was this up until you encountered the brain gym?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, exactly what you said, until I encountered brain gym. Reading for me was only pleasurable when I found, and even when I found Maya Angelou, that was one of the first authors who really held my attention across the pages. But even when I found her, I would still find myself having to reread because my mind would wander. So all the way through grad school, and then when I started using Brain Gym, I mean, everything completely changed. In addition to my reading, I actually remember doing, we call it a balance, when you have a session using Brain Gym. In this balance session, I helped my nervous system and my whole entire system, my heart, my spirit, everything, align itself so that I could be able to read and comprehend more easily because it was such a challenge for me.
Wow, Christa, what you're sharing, I want to thank you for that, and because there are many people that have struggled in similar ways that what you were expressing. And while you were talking, what it made me remember was that in your story is how much harder you were working than you needed to. If not but for, if you had that other piece in place where have the elevated relaxation response going on. If someone had been able to introduce you to Brain Gym the way you are introducing young children and teens and adults also, because it's across the board. So that's really fabulous. I just want to segue to this issue. I understand that you help clients tap into their intuitive side. Christine and I are very much into learning how to use our intuition better in better ways and rely on it and to test it to know when it's working and when it's not. So could you just explain briefly how you help people tap into their intuitive side?
Sure, absolutely. So basically, one of the things that we're taught a lot in Brain Gym, as well as in formative spirituality, is noticing. And so when clients come to me, when we are working in a session, they'll basically go through the movements with me, and I'll keep asking them questions. How do you feel now? What are you noticing now? What are you thinking? What are you feeling emotionally? What's going on physically? So once we start asking those 3 questions about what are you thinking, what are you feeling emotionally, and physically, what are you experiencing? Those are the beginnings of teaching them how to notice, and I also call it listening, because you're listening more to your body, and you're also listening more to what it is that you want to do. But speaking first with the 3 questions, once they start getting those 3 questions in their head, then they go back, and I encourage them to do this, continue to notice and pay attention throughout the day, and then when you need it, use either all of the 5 basic movements that I spoke about earlier, or just pick one of those basic movements and use it, and then notice how you feel before and notice how you feel after. That before and after is really what captures everybody's attention and interest, because they're so astounded, as I was, when I was first, number one, introduced to Brain Gym, but during my very first balance session that I had, I remember being so anxious, and then after the session, which was very simple, maybe it was 45 minutes, and then I did a few movements, and after the session, I thought to myself, I can't believe that that's all I needed to do to feel this good. And I've been experiencing anxiety all my life and just pushing and, kind of like swallowing the feelings and just keep going through life. And this was all I had to do. So again, you're basically teaching them those 3 questions. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? And what feeling meaning emotions, and then also what are you experiencing physically. And then from there, everybody starts to basically get it, and they start to practice it, and they start to use it. In all of our sessions, in every single session, you're constantly checking in with your client to say, how are you feeling now? What are you noticing now? And then you're teaching them the listening component, which is the making connections component. So you're basically, when you're in a session and they're telling you, like I'll give you an example of what we end up doing is in life, in general, we end up saying to ourselves, oh, I was trying to get that done as fast as I could, right? And so right then and there, that's a sign for you to say, okay, well, do you notice that when you're walking? Do you notice that when you're reading? Do you notice that when you're writing? And so now they're catching on to this pattern of what you're doing physically is matching what you're doing mentally, and then that's matching what you're doing emotionally. And so once they start listening and then noticing and connecting these patterns, they're going to start catching them and be able to use Brain Gym to be able to re-educate their nervous system so they break that pattern and create a new pattern. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I like the idea of changing brain patterns. Bob and I both use that in different ways in our work. Now, you've already been talking about this, Christa, with Bob, but I want to continue to go down this path a little bit with the way Brain Gym has transformed your own life, and particularly the way it's been helpful in relieving your fear and anxiety. On your site, you mentioned that you work with your clients over a period of time. It's not really that you do it once and then, or you tell me, is this something that you will notice it immediately and remember it, or you need to practice it a while to be able to, in the moment when you're feeling anxious or fearful or less than at your optimum? How does this work?
Okay. So I can give you a really good example that'll help you understand it a little better. So I was working with a client and just for the very first session. And after the first session, he noticed a remarkable difference in his perspective as far as viewing a situation he was dealing with his family. And when he came in to have the session with me, he was very negative about it, very anxious. He kept moving, and his heart was racing, and he kept talking extremely fast. And so after the session, he was starting to see the positive things that were happening and that it wasn't as bad as he had perceived it to be. And in addition, his speech had slowed and his body movement now was much slower, and he was calmer, and he was able to look at me and have the conversation versus kind of being, how you're frantic and you're kind of moving all over, right? So to answer your question, yes, you can notice the difference right away. And then what I had told him was, because everybody's concern is, will this stick? Will this last, right? And it's with anything in life. Once you experience it, you know now that it's possible. And now what's happened is we've created a way for your body to react to it positively. And now for you to reinforce it, you'll continue to do Brain Gym movements in your daily life. And actually what we do is we muscle check. We ask the client to go through a series of muscle checks so that they can basically have their body respond and say, I need this movement as needed, or I need this movement 3 times a day, or I need this movement in the morning. So we're basically checking in with their body, their system, because they know best. I mean, it's their day and it's their lifestyle, right? And so if this particular client, he came to me, and his struggle was a lot of his negativity and a lot of his anxiety. And so we basically found out through muscle testing that he needed to be doing pace once a day without fail. And so after a while, he started noticing the changes, because so now his nervous system is responding, and now when it goes into a state of anxiety, he's allowed, right, because he's much calmer now, he's allowed to think and make a more rational decision, which is, I'm going to get into pace. That's the name of the 5 basic movements. I'm going to get into pace, and then I'm going to feel better. So now he's able to break state and get out of that anxious state and give his body what it needs, which is to be calmer. So that's what he does in his regular life, right, in his everyday life. Then he comes back for another session with me, and we work on another goal, and that's most likely related to his level of anxiety or to his negativity. And in that goal, then we get to go a little bit deeper and use some different movements and talk to him about other things that may need some support in his system. And so then from there, some new movements will come up for him to practice. So that's why it does, like I say, you'll notice it right away without fail. I could even just teach you the 5 movements over the phone, and you would be able to notice a difference. I've done that before in webinars and in calls with clients. So that part is very immediate. The part that is lasting is, and I'm a testament to that, is that what happens to your nervous system and to your body, your mind, and your spirit and your heart over time after doing this work. Eventually it gets integrated, and in formative spirituality we say then the disposition to be calmer and the disposition to be more courageous and more present, then that disposition gets integrated and anchored in your system, and now you have that instead of anxiety and fear.
Wonderful. It sounds fantastic. Well, we will learn more. Audience, we'll be back in a moment on Learn to Live Stress-Free with our featured guest today, Christa Gesztesi.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Wright, Jr., the Stress Relief Doctor, co-host of the Learn to Live Stress-Free podcast series. I'm an author, speaker, and stress management wellness coach. My published study is the first to show the connection between stress reduction, grief recovery, nitric oxide spiking, and the relaxation response. And my practical application of this knowledge helps you relieve the stresses of everyday life. I have the tools to dissolve your pain points quickly and effectively. Email me to find out how you can start to feel better now at stressfreenow.info/contact. That's stressfreenow.info/contact. Have you been procrastinating about completing an important project or pursuing a treasured dream? Christine Wright specializes in helping her coaching clients to lay out clear, elegant strategies. She shows you how to quickly build your confidence to uncover and eliminate your habitual patterns of resistance and self-sabotage. Christine helps you discover those meaningful insights that will get you to do what works so you can celebrate your successes. Go to stressfreenow.info/contact to let Christine know that you're ready to live your ideal life now. Again, that's stressfreenow.info/contact.
Welcome back to Learn to Live Stress-Free as we continue our conversation with our featured guest, Brain Gym practitioner, Christa Gesztesi. Christa, before the break, in addition to Brain Gym, you had mentioned formative spirituality. So let's turn our conversation to that so our audience can learn more about it. How did you become involved with formative spirituality, and how do you incorporate that into your practice and your work with clients?
So formative spirituality was introduced to me in 2008. So that was 9 years ago. So I was meeting with a spiritual director to explore my spiritual life and to go deeper with my relationship with God. And in the course of the conversations, I didn't know this at the time, but she would be guiding me basically to teach me more about listening to God and more about understanding how every single thing that happens to me in the course of the day relates to my call as far as what God is calling me to be, what God is calling me to do. And I didn't understand how everything could be related because for me, and this is especially due to that, when you're very nervous and anxious, you kind of look at everything sort of fragmentedly, and there's nothing holistic about what you see. And so she was instrumental in guiding me along this path of understanding how everything is connected and how God's plan for you is shown to you in the smallest things during the day, washing the dishes, walking across the street and having somebody almost run you over, or, somebody at the supermarket gets upset with you and how you react. Everything is completely related. And so after a while, she would give me books written by Adrian von Kamm. He is the founder of Formative Spirituality. And I started to make connections to everything that he was writing about, and it felt like he was writing directly to me because I think I had already naturally had a certain level of insight, and I was very able to, think a little bit more introspectively, I guess, than some of my friends. And so I thought to myself, all right, now this is all making sense now. I get it now, how God's talking to me. I get it's all related. And then she suggested that I study formative spirituality, and so I did. So I went out to Pittsburgh, and I studied the work for their program is you can do it over the summer for 3 summers, or you can do it throughout the year. And my spiritual director, she had a master's degree in formative spirituality, and this was when it was at Duquesne University. And then they moved to have their own center so that they could do more of the work independently of the university. And so basically what ended up happening was I got my certification, and so now I can do group spiritual direction and individual spiritual direction. But right now what I'm using it for mostly is to support my clients, again, in how everything is connected. I don't have to, in certain sessions, I don't have to refer to God. It just happens that, I guess, it's such as life, that when you meet clients, they tend to be coming to you for a particular reason. So most of my clients are very spiritually oriented and very interested in how it is that God is talking to them. So that ends up being in conversation. But I have had clients that do not, have the same faith as I do, and so we don't refer to it in that way. And I guide them along according to their higher power. And then aside from that, basically the other aspect of the work that I'm now developing is to offer retreats so that I can guide people along in seeing how God's working in their life, and then use Brain Gym as a tool to be able to open them up so that they can get past any fear or anxiety or any other block that they might be having. So Brain Gym will be a tool then to support the development of their relationship with God.
It sounds very complimentary. You know what Bob and I do in our work is we talk about 4 aspects: the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. What are you lacking in these areas, and what do you feel would help to support these areas? And what I have always said, or what I've found for a very long time, spirituality can be about faith, but we have a spiritual nature. It does not necessarily have to be related to a faith or religious practice, but it is an aspect of our being.
Yes.
So we've actually always incorporated that in our work also. Now,
beautiful.
Christa, Bob had seen on your Facebook page, and he brought it to my attention, and you just mentioned this, that you do the workshops, and you did a recent Lenten workshop where you were showing your quick and easy Lenten tools for busy people. How did the participants find this workshop, and how often have you been doing this?
This is one of my favorites. We just started it this year, and it was, I can't even explain. I mean, you can see actually on the Facebook page, I talked about what the participants had shared and how they felt, and I was so overjoyed because I have been using both of these tools very, very explicitly in my life, and to be able to share it now in a forum where people of faith can use it for a specific purpose was phenomenal, and the reaction was amazing, and it was just beautiful to watch people say, I feel like I can listen more easily to God, and I feel like I'm drawing myself closer to Him, and that now I'm seeing more of how He's talking to me in my life. I mean, right there I was like, done, mission accomplished, I'm the happiest person on earth. Because, I mean, what a gift to be able to hear somebody say that they're being pulled closer to God. I mean, my heart was so happy. And so the other beautiful aspect of it was I had been reflecting so much on Lent, and it's one of my favorite seasons because you do kind of go through a retreat in a way, because you're sacrificing something in your life, you're praying more often, and then you're donating either your time or your money to something, and so that's another sacrifice. So it's a beautiful time to draw closer to God. And what I had been noticing in the homilies of some priests that at our parish was that, we have to sort of consider moving away from this, I'm going to give up chocolate for Lent. and move a little bit deeper into giving something up that will then go away. And the idea is to replace God with the thing that you're giving up. And so it was beautiful because we used Brain Gym to help them center themselves and focus and then listen into really what are the thorns in their life, what's really preventing them from being who they are, number one, and that's a big, big piece of formative spirituality. It's very much about you being the truest version of yourself. And then what's preventing you from drawing yourself closer to God. And one of the participants, she actually contacted me after the presentation to tell me that one of the things that was drawing her away from God was fear. And she, after the event, she had the 3 workshops, she had said that her thing that she was going to give up during Lent was fear. And since then, she's been taking steps towards finding a new job. And it was just, her smile was just radiant. I mean, to see someone, and I'm sure you've seen it, when your clients break out of that fear and now they're liberated and now they can go be who they are in this world. It was such a joy to hear that.
Well, I hear it in your voice, and I think obviously what's so very rewarding for you is you were able to get this immediate feedback of how well this was received and how it's positively changing the participant's life. I can sense your enthusiasm from what you're saying here, so that's wonderful, Christa.
Yeah, no, it was truly wonderful, and even now I have a woman came to me and we started actually working together. She's a writer, and she wanted to work on a few projects, so she was in the presentation, and so now she's a client of mine. So it was a beautiful introduction, you know.
Wonderful. That's excellent.
Christa, your company, Intelligent Connections, I love the name, Intelligent Connections. So when I was looking at your material, what struck me, and I believe which will resonate very well with our audience, is the fact that you talk about what your company is about and what Brain Gym is about is truly integrating body, mind, and spirit for optimal living. When I saw that phrase, I said, oh, who doesn't want optimal living? We all want optimal living. And so could you, I think you already you touched on this, the joy for a person to be living optimal, and that's different for each person. For some people want more money, some people want more time, some people want more money and more time. I think you'd have both hands raised, more leisure time, more family time. So the sense that I get is that you are bringing joy into the environment using movement, which reminds me very much of what Christine does when she demonstrates the ideokinesis. So could you just speak to the optimal living part, that the Brain Gym is part of creating an optimal life, and how it ties directly into the formative spirituality that you just were talking about?
Sure, yeah. So optimal living, it basically came from my own personal experience. I felt a lot of what I went through in my life, just having so much anxiety and fear, that it held me back from a lot of things. As I said before, the way I accomplished anything in my life was through pushing and working really, really hard. And when everything came together for me, and when I thought about what I wanted my business to be, I thought, well, I want people to experience what I experienced, which was you don't have to work that hard. And you don't have to try that hard either. And so when I work with my clients, a lot of the things that they end up feeling, one of them is just lighter, because when you have so much stress, whatever it is, I had a father recently who has a toddler, and he and his wife had been married for many years before they had their child, and so he, in addition to that, what also made the situation a little bit more stressful is that he is an entrepreneur. He is a musician. And so now he's experiencing, I'm going to be, I'm now a new father. The relationship between me and my wife has changed. And then in addition to that, I'm supposed to provide for my family on a musician's salary. So he was experiencing so many stressors that it was not, and then it not only does it affect your relationship with your wife, it affects your relationship with your son, it affects your relationship as a musician. And so for him, what he was experiencing was nothing that would allow him to just be himself, whether it was, creatively as a musician, but then in addition to that, just being a dad, just having fun with his son. He would often talk about how he'd be in his office and his son would be, asking for attention and tugging on him, and he would have to kind of shoo him away, and then he would feel guilty for that, but then at the same time he had to get his work done for promoting events for his shows. So it was a very big struggle for him. And so everybody that I know does have some level of struggle in that way. And that's not living optimally, because you're in a constant state of stress. He's always feeling guilty for not being able to do something. And then on top of it, he would talk about how he would then snap, at his son, right? And then get into arguments with his wife. And now you're going to feel badly about that as well. So you're in this constant state, this cycle of feeling stressed, feeling guilty, and then feeling badly because you're not, quote unquote, good enough. And that actually came up in one of his sessions, feeling like he wasn't good enough as a person. And you can imagine, and this did happen, it brought him to tears to be able to say to yourself, I'm not good enough. So what I'm trying to say is that none of this, and we all go through life and we all smile and we all say, it's okay, and we go on. But for him, it was basically him recognizing this is not optimal living. This is not me living to be who I am in a simple way. So going through the program with me, and I say program because I work with clients in either 3 or 6 month programs and other time frames depending on people's needs, he basically realized in this time how much easier his life became because he was able to use these movements to center himself. And then he learned from that. This is the cool part. So yes, you're becoming more relaxed, and yes, you're able to be more focused. So he was getting his work done in half the time, like I explained to you earlier. That's one of the big benefits of Brain Gym. Not only that, but now he was able to recognize when I'm going to put my work away for a second, it's going to get done, I'm going to go play with my son. And one of my favorite anecdotes that he gave me was that normally when he was preparing for a gig, he would get really stressed out about making sure enough people were going to be there. And so he was dealing with that, but then on top of it, somebody from the band canceled. I guess they had like a new member of the band, and he wasn't able to make it that night. He had some sort of emergency. And he said, normally, I would have downward spiraled and nothing would have gotten done, and I would have just been, in his words, having like a panic attack about it and going crazy. And he literally had said to himself, no, it's going to work out. He closed the computer and went and had breakfast with his wife. I mean, it was a total transformation for him. And this was because now you're living optimally. Now things are not controlling you, but you're rather now in control of your emotions and the situation and how you want to live. So that's what I mean by living optimally.
Well, you should see the huge smile on Christine's face. Just wrap around, because when things happen, she always reminds me continually, Bob, let's stay on the cause side of the equation. And we have this little inside joke where one day Christine had done some substitute teaching, and something happened in the classroom, and she came home and she said, because I asked her, how was your day? And she says, there was a meltdown. And the kid said, why is this happening to me, right? And he's running around flailing his hands. And so the thing is that whenever we do that, whether we're a child or we're an adult, somebody cuts you off on the road, you're going to be late for work if you miss the elevator. The elevator, you're at the end of the hall, you're locking your door, the people get on, they do not hold the elevator for you, and you're on the 25th floor, and so you're going to be late. And so saying, why is this happening to me, is not going to be helpful. So what you just said, which is basically using Christine's metaphor, which is staying on the cause side, which all the research, Christa, shows that when you increase the locus of your control, or you perceive that your locus of control is in your favor, your stress level goes down, your anxiety goes down, etc. And so that what you gave was the perfect example. And I want to thank you for sharing that, because, many people will be listening and saying, oh, look, she's a school teacher and she had anxiety. And so how are the kids? This is a real thing. Many people are dealing with anxiety. I did a couple of shows where the statistics are 18% of the United States population, or about 40 million adults 18 and over, have some form of anxiety disorder. So it's very common. And that doesn't include the people under 18. So we know if you go into the schools, teenagers, young people, they have anxiety too. Some people can't sleep, etc. So I want to thank you so much for sharing and being our featured guest today.
Well, what I wanted to say, Bob, before you continue, Christa, the other phrase that Bob and I like to use is less is more. Because sometimes when your mind is catastrophizing and, this is terrible, everything is, and you just get sort of revved up and can't put yourself together, that at least with Bob and I, since we're both doing, the same work, one or the other of us can remind the other one, less is more. And I remember that so much with this young student, that phrase, because I said, how old is this child? You think of an adult saying that.
Right.
But he was a fifth grader, and he couldn't get to pet the bunny rabbit, and he wanted to play with the bunny rabbit longer, and the time was up for that activity. So he got all upset, and he said, why is this happening to me? So it just goes to show at any age we can experience stress, and different things are stressful to different people.
It's so true. It's so true. And that is just a comment further, that is one of the other great aspects of both Brain Gym and formative spirituality, is the idea of empowerment. And that empowerment may come through, I am in control of the situation, I can do something about it, and it may come into surrender, just letting it go, and this is just the way it is for now.
Exactly, and that's really the operative word, for now, and that's where we forget, when we're not in the moment.
Yes.
And our thoughts pile on. Well, Christa, I just want to join Bob in thanking you for being on our show today. And I'd like you to take this time to tell our audience how they can contact you if they want to work with you or hire you as a keynote speaker.
Sure. And thank you both, by the way. It has been such a pleasure. It's always a pleasure speaking with the two of you, so it makes my heart happy. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
So the best way to get in contact with me is via my contact page on my website, www.intelligent-connections.com. And when you click on the contact page, you'll be brought to a section to either fill out a form if you wanted to ask a general question, or you can click to schedule a discovery call with me. And the discovery call is really important and really helpful to both a potential client and to me, because we take some time to get to know each other and see how I might be able to help them make changes in their life that they're seeking.
Okay, wonderful. And you also have a Facebook page?
I do, and that is also Intelligent Connections Facebook.
Okay, very good. All right, so audience, you can get in touch with Christa or learn more about what she's doing at www.intelligent-connections.com. And on her website, you can go to the contact page to email her or schedule a discovery session with her. And you can also check out what she's up to on her Facebook page, also at Intelligent-Connections. So, Christa, again, we want to thank you for being on our show.
Thank you both. It was such a pleasure.
Christa, what final thoughts or key idea would you like our audience to take away from today's broadcast?
I think it would be really helpful if everybody just continued to listen really well to their body and just give themselves what they need. That was one of the greatest things one of my Brain Gym instructors taught me is give your body what it needs. So if you need a break, take a break. If you need to feel loved, know that you are, and call a friend to make you feel even better.
Great. Thank you, Christa. I want to thank you so much for being our featured guest today, and I want to thank our audience for listening, no matter where you are and in whatever time zone you're in right now. You know, we have people listening all around the world. We want you to know how much we appreciate your presence, and we trust that you'll benefit and that you have benefited in some real way from the information that was delivered on today's show. As always, we look forward to and we welcome receiving your comments about the show. Please let us know if there are any additional topics you'd like to see us cover, or if there's a guest you enjoyed whom you'd like us to invite back, like Christa. Please contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. Remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us, including learning how you can get more results in your day and easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, and anxiety, then give us a call at 954-900-2179. Mention that you heard our Stress Free Now podcast show, and you'll receive a free gift from us. Call today to schedule your appointment. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of StressFreeNow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.